Okay, Erev Tov everyone. So as promised last week, I said we were going to do something a little bit different during the slot, especially now going into the long winter. So I thought rather than just haphazardly, randomly choosing a different topic each day, but we will, each day of the week, with the exception of Mondays when I'm not here, but each day of the week we'll go through a different topic or a different sefer or something and try and systematically cover a certain topic as the weeks and the months go on. So I thought on Sundays is a good time to study together Mesillat Yesharim of the Ramchal. This is the... It's okay. It's a tremendous sefer for those who are not familiar with it, and if you're familiar with it. But this is really the essential work of character building, the essential work of Musar that exists in the Jewish library, I would say. And it's worth going through, and it's worth learning together. There are tremendous insights in here. We'll see in a moment. We'll see inside. But it's a book that was written centuries ago, but it really speaks to us so much. You know, you read through the different chapters and the different things that Ramchal writes in here, and it's as if he's talking for our generation. Some of these ideas are actually far more relevant today than they were even when he wrote them, I would venture to say. And before we start with the introduction, just the title of the book. There's so much, Mesillat Yesharim. Those two words contain so much. Yesharim, we spoke, I think it was last week, maybe the week before, about the fact that Sefer Bereshit is called Sefer Yashar, or Sefer Yesharim. Right? We spoke about the introduction of the Netziv. We talked about what that means, Sefer Yashar, how the Avot were Yesharim, before we can go and try and build castles in the sky, so to speak. Before we can reach these huge levels of piety, a person has to be Yashar. A person has to have Derech Eretz. A person has to have, be before, they say to people sometimes, I was once in a shul and somebody there was a Brit Milah, there was a birth, and somebody said, give him a bracha for the baby. And the person said, Sheyeh ben Adam. Right? Before anything, you be a person, you be a mensch. The word mensch, we think about it, that means a man, be a person. You have to have yashrut, which is not always so easy, it's not always so simple. That's one of the things that the Ramchal talks about. He says, these things which people think are so basic and so obvious, and you don't think about it, so you never study it, and then when you never study it, it actually is not so obvious, and then you aren't able to fulfill it. And then that's going to be the thesis of why he wrote this book. So that's the idea of Yesharim. The other word is Mesillat, which Mesillat means a path, means a pathway. It's not all or nothing. It's not, you can't just go in one step. There's a path, there's a way to climb, and there's a way to achieve it. So let's jump into the beginning. We'll see how it goes. He writes here, and he has a Hakdama. Hakdamat Harav Mechaber writes as follows. Says the Ramchal of Moshe Chaim Lutzatto, Amar Mechaber, Hachibu hazeh lo chibartiv lelamed lifnei adam et asher lo yadau. So this is amazing. Nobody would sell a book like this nowadays. But the first thing he writes, he says, I've got a sefer, you're going to read it, you're going to study my book, and you won't find a single chiddush. You won't find a single thing inside this book that you don't already know. So first of all, that tells you a little bit about the humility of the Ramchal, because there are plenty of things in here, certainly I did not know before I read the book. But this is his point. He says the point of this is not to give you chidushim. It's not, you learn something, you get up at the end, you meet somebody in the street, you say, do you have a chidush? What's a chidush that you learned today? You're looking for chidushim, you're in the wrong place. You're not going to find any. I have not composed this work to teach you things you don't know. So why do we have the book? What are we learning if we already know it all? I'm going to remind you of that which you already know, which you already meant to know. I'll say in a moment that a lot of the things which at least maybe in the Ramchal's day were self-evident are not so self-evident today. That even if what he's saying in the introduction was true when he wrote it, meaning that 99% of people that pick up the book will know and it will be obvious, nowadays things are not obvious. You just have to look around to see, what's going on. Things which were self-evident for most of human history today are not self-evident. The difference between good and evil, the difference between light and dark, and the difference between things which should be very, very clear today are not. But nonetheless, assuming even that it was clear, he says, I want to remind people of that which they already know, already should know. Things which are the famous things which are very famous. The well-known things which are very, very well-known. Meaning, ironically, and that's the paradox here, is that the more well-known that something is, the more obvious that it is, so the less people tend to think about it, and the less people tend to do it. There are so many examples in our own lives. You think about health, you think about healthy eating, etc. Everybody knows what you should be eating, what you shouldn't be eating. Everybody knows that it's good to exercise. There's doctors in the audience. Everybody knows what you should do and what's necessary to keep yourself healthy. How many people actually do it? Far fewer. Not because they don't know, but because they just can't be bothered. So therefore he says, Ki lo timtza barov dvarai. It's the same thing for physical health. We're going to have to say for spiritual health as well. Ki lo timtza barov dvarai ela dvarim sherov bnei adam yodim otam v'lo mistapkim beim klal. Continues, he says, most of the things you will find in this book, you will not find things that people don't know. You will not find things that people question. Again, that was correct when he wrote the book. Nowadays, people question everything, and a lot of things which Judaism is all about questioning. But certain things which we shouldn't question, in today's world, people do question, and the things that people should question, they don't, right? That's a separate problem. But he says most of these things people don't question. But since things are so obvious and so straightforward to people, the point is, the more obvious that things are, and the more straightforward they should be to us, so the more we tend, therefore, not to think about them, and the more we tend to neglect them, and the more that we therefore forget about them. And therefore, he says the first principle. This is a guide, how to use this book. A lot of books nowadays, the self-help books and whatever they publish, and before you start the book and before you get the introduction, there's a chapter that says how to use this book. So this is the Ramchal's before I write the actual book, right? How to use the book. He says, if you just read the book once, forget about it. So not only are there things in here, things that are obvious that you already know, that you shouldn't have read, but therefore, if you're going to read the book, you're just going to read it once and close it and say, I've finished the book. So you haven't even started. You've missed the point. He repeats himself, says it again. Right. By the way, the Vilna Gaon said that this book was so important. He said it was so extraordinary. The Vilna Gaon is reported to have said that he would have walked all the way to Italy to learn from the Ramchal himself. And he says that in the first 11 chapters of the book, there is not a single superfluous word. I don't know what happened in chapter 12. But that's what's reported, that the Vilna Gaon said, the first 11 chapters of this book, there is not a single superfluous word. So he says, you're going to read it once, right? Even beyond the 11 chapters. You won't find anything new. You won't find a single chidushim. I've already told you. You know everything that's in it. There's nothing that you say, oh, now I know something I didn't know before. Maybe a few, but not much. Where does the benefit come from this book? That you're going to go back and you're going to do chazar, you're going to look at this book again and again. It means to be continuous. There are many things which we forget about. In other words, what am I here for? What am I meant to be doing? When I read again and again, it comes into my consciousness. Meaning this book is not about bringing you knowledge, but it's about bringing you awareness. It's about having things that you know, but that you'll be able to think of them. You could put it another way. You could say this is not an instruction manual, but rather it's a workbook. And then, again, to go back to the analogy of health and physical health, because it's such an easy way to understand, because these are things that we all do, things that I often neglect. Sometimes when a person has an orthopedic operation or something like that, and afterwards they have to have physiotherapy. So if a person knows exactly what exercises they have to, the physiotherapist comes and they come to the hospital and they tell the person, or they come to the house and say, you have to do an exercise, and they teach you how to do the exercises. Okay, so you say, now I know how to do the exercises, so now I can walk. It doesn't work that way. The fact that you know how to do the exercise is very good. If you don't know what the exercise is, so then you have no hope. But once you know what the exercise is, you have to practice it. You have to implement it. You have to do it every day, every other day, however many times a week. And only then. So that's what the Ramchal says. He says, understand, if you want to become a better person, or you want to remain a good person, and you want to fulfill your obligation in the world, which is the first thing we're going to talk about before we talk about what those exercises are. Well, what is the point of the exercise? What am I here for? What am I doing? But if I want to, I need to be constantly thinking about it, and I need to return to it, and I need to perform the exercises. And if I don't perform the exercises, then inertia means I'm going to go backwards, and I'm not going to do what I'm here to do. So therefore, if you read my book once, you'll read it and you'll say, Shkoyach, that was a very nice book. It's all laid out very well. I didn't find any chidushim, didn't find a single thing that I didn't know before. He says, you've missed the point. But if you read the book and you go back and you realize, oh, this is the way we're meant to do it, and maybe this is a way to achieve a better level of tefillah, and this is a way to achieve a more refined level of speech, and this is a way to achieve better relationships with those around me. Okay, so now there is a point, and now there is a toilet, and that's what it's all about. So he says, "V'tireh, im titponen ba'oveh barov ha'olam, כי רוב אנשי השכל המהיר והפיקחים והחריפים ישימו רוב התבוננם והסתכלותם בדקות החוכמה ועומק עיונה." He says, first of all, okay, now I've explained to you what this is about, what our goal is. I'm now going to explain to you the need for this book, because actually right now he's going to sell it, right? If we said the opening paragraph, you're selling the book and you're saying the book, yeah, there's nothing new, there's not a single chidush, okay, not so good. But now I'm going to tell you exactly why you need this book. I'm going to tell you what is so wrong with the world and what people are missing, and you can see this today very much. This happened, there's a lot of talk about if you know the history of the Musar movement, for example, of Yisrael Salant, when he began the Musar movement, and the same thing happened with Hasidim to a great extent as well. They were very much maligned, there was a lot of criticism across the Yeshiva world, across the Jewish world, to say these are movements that are there for people who are, they can't sit and learn. They're not able to achieve the depth of Torah. They're not able to achieve the mastery of Torah. So therefore they go and they waste their time on other things. And essentially, this predates that. But the Ramchal claims, he opines, that this is the situation that we have in the Jewish world. He says, look around at the world. And he says, most of the intelligent people, most of the people around you that you'll see that are very sharp, what are they going to spend most of their time doing? Intellectual pursuits. They're going to be going through very advanced and deep analytical study. That's very good. We're not against that. But what's the problem? He says, everybody is going to go. Chazal tell us, En adam lomed Torah, ela mimakom shelibo chafetz. Every person is drawn to a certain area of Torah, a certain area of study, whatever that may be. So there are those, so first of all, he's talking about secular intellectual study. There are those who are more interested in the natural world, there are those interested in the sciences, there are those who are interested in mathematics, different areas. Those who go to tchuna, handasa, melachot, practical areas of study. And there are those whose intellectual quest is more based inside Torah itself. And in the world of Torah, there are different specialities, right? Some people are more drawn towards halakha, some people are drawn towards midrashim, some people are drawn towards and other things. But he says, how many people are there whose essential is what today we'd call maybe musar, or we'd call character development or growth or things like that? How many people are there who put their energy and their time and their effort into studying these matters? Okay, that's true. Today, nowadays, maybe there's a little bit of an awakening in these areas, and maybe you find that there is more study that takes place. But even then, you find that nowadays as well, that many people will scoff, many people will look down at it. You're studying Chassidut. Chassidut over here does not mean Chassidut in the historical sense of the Baal Shem Tov. Chassidut means sort of piety, right? Avodat Hashem, etc. But if you see people that are studying that, so you look down, they're looked down upon. And again, the people who look down on this are not claiming that these are not important things. They're not saying that Avat Hashem is not an important matter. Everybody needs to know what Avat Hashem is. But they'll say, everybody knows what Avat Hashem is. Everybody knows what it means to be an Eved Hashem. Everybody knows what it means to be a good Jew. You don't have to study it. You don't have to waste 15 minutes between mincha-maariv learning Mesillat Yesharim. You can learn a sugya be'iyam, and you'll be fine. And says Ramchal, that's incorrect. we're going to see, we'll carry on next time, but we're going to see exactly what that leads and what the situation that's created is and how to resolve that.